The simulation deck erupted in flames as Lieutenant Crate's warship tore through the human formation for the third time in 10 minutes. Alarms screamed. Hull breaches flashed red across every tactical display. 27 cadets from 15 species watched their fleet dissolve into debris. "Exercise terminated," Crate announced, his mandibles clicking with satisfaction. The holographic carnage froze mid-explosion. Total annihilation. Again, the Velxian instructor towered at the front of the combat operations classroom, his 4 eyes scanning the silent cadets with undisguised contempt. His exoskeleton gleamed under the harsh lights of the Interstellar Naval Academy's primary training facility. "Pathetic," he continued, pacing between the simulation pods. "Absolutely pathetic. Humanity has attended this academy for 3 cycles now. 3 cycles, and not one human squad has survived the Kessler scenario." Cadet Emma Price sat in Pod 17, her hands still gripping the controls, though the simulation had ended. Sweat dripped down her temples. Her heart hammered against her ribs. Around her, alien classmates whispered in a dozen languages, their bioluminescent skin dimming with shame. Crate's laughter cut through the murmurs. The sound resembled grinding metal. "You primates cannot think beyond your primitive instincts. Charge forward. Attack. Die. This is why humanity will never hold command positions in the Galactic Defense Coalition." Emma's jaw tightened. She'd run the numbers during the engagement. Something was wrong. The scenario parameters didn't match the briefing documents. Enemy response times were impossible. Weapon yields exceeded documented specifications by 40%. "Instructor Crate," she said, her voice steady despite the adrenaline flooding her system. The entire classroom went silent. Speaking after failure was considered deeply disrespectful in Velxian culture. Several cadets inhaled sharply. Crate turned slowly, his predatory gaze fixing on Emma. "Cadet Price, you wish to offer excuses?" "No, sir," Emma replied, standing at attention beside her pod. "I want to know why we failed." His mandibles spread wide in what passed for a Velxian grin. "Because you are weak. Slow. Weak. Inferior. That's not what I asked." Emma pulled up her wrist display, fingers flying across the holographic interface. "I'm asking why the enemy fleet had 32 ships when the briefing specified 18. Why their plasma cannons fired at triple the documented recharge rate. Why their shields absorbed direct hits from weapons that should have penetrated." The classroom atmosphere shifted. Other cadets were checking their own data now, confused expressions spreading across alien faces. Kate's eyes narrowed to slits. "You question the integrity of Academy simulations?" "I'm questioning why the parameters were altered without notification," Emma said. She stepped forward, holding his gaze. "Standard doctrine requires scenario transparency for training exercises." "This wasn't training. This was rigged. Insubordinate human filth," Crate hissed, moving toward her with shocking speed. "You fail because your species is—" "Prove it," Emma interrupted. Her voice dropped to something cold and dangerous. "Run it again. Regulation parameters. Right now." Crate's laughter filled the room, but there was something different in it now, something uncertain. Emma smiled, and it didn't reach her eyes. "Unless you're afraid of what happens when humans fight fair." The challenge hung in the air like a live grenade. Crate's exoskeleton plates shifted, a biological tell that Emma had studied during her xenobiology courses. He was rattled. "You dare," he whispered, his translator barely picking up the guttural Velxian syllables. Around the classroom, cadets leaned forward in their pods. A Thaxian in the front row blinked all 6 eyes in rapid succession, their species equivalent of shocked disbelief. Didn't blink. Academy Regulation 742. Any cadet may request scenario verification if statistical anomalies suggest parameter corruption. I'm requesting verification, sir. Craith's claws scraped against the podium. The sound set Emma's teeth on edge, but she held her ground. She'd spent 2 years at this academy, watching humans get pushed to the bottom of every ranking, dismissed in every tactical discussion, assigned the worst postings upon graduation. The Galactic Defense Coalition took Earth's ships and soldiers, but gave humanity nothing but contempt in return. "Fine," Craith finally said, his voice dripping with venom. "You want to embarrass yourself further? Run the scenario solo. Regulation parameters. When you fail, Cadet Price, I will personally ensure you spend your entire career scrubbing plasma conduits on mining stations." Solo? Emma felt her pulse spike. The Kessler scenario was designed for full crew coordination. Tactical, engineering, weapons, navigation, communications. It required at least 5 operators working in perfect synchronization. Problem, human? Craith's mandibles clicked rapidly. Surely your species' legendary arrogance extends to individual capability? Emma glanced around the classroom. Every alien face showed the same expression. Pity. They'd all seen humans fail before. The simulation pods near hers remained empty, her squad mates from the previous run not meeting her eyes. "No problem, sir." Emma climbed back into Pod 17. Her hands found the controls with practiced ease. "But I need witnesses. Full Academy observation protocol. Every instructor, every department head, if I'm going down, it goes on permanent record." That stopped Craith mid-step. Emma saw the calculation flash across his alien features. A public failure would be entertainment, but a public challenge meant scrutiny. It meant other instructors would review the scenario parameters, would ask questions. "Agreed," he said slowly. "But when you fail, you withdraw from the academy entirely. Humanity doesn't need more mediocre officers." "When I succeed," Emma countered, strapping into the pod's neural interface, "you submit to a full tribunal review of every simulation you've run for the past 3 cycles. Every parameter, every modification, every human cadet you've washed out." The classroom exploded in whispered conversations. A Dravixian cadet actually stood up, mouth hanging open. Challenging an instructor to a tribunal was career suicide. It meant accusing them of corruption, of violating the Coalition's sacred principles of merit-based advancement. Craith went utterly still. For 5 long seconds, the only sound was the hum of the simulation equipment and the thunder of Emma's heartbeat in her ears. "Done," he hissed. "Initiate observation protocol." The walls of the classroom shimmered as recording drones emerged from hidden ports. Within minutes, holographic observers flickered into existence around the room's perimeter. Emma recognized Admiral Voss, the Terran fleet commander. His weathered face showed no emotion, but his presence meant someone had been paying attention to the human failure rate. Beside him appeared Commandant Thex, a crystalline being whose species had founded the Academy 400 years ago. If anyone could verify scenario integrity, it was Thex. "Scenario parameters locked and verified," Thex announced, her voice like wind chimes. "Kessler Defense Formation. Standard difficulty. Regulation enemy fleet composition. Beginning in 30 seconds. Emma closed her eyes and took 3 deep breaths. Her father's voice echoed in her memory from a decade ago, back in the cramped cockpit of their atmospheric racer in Nevada. "Fear is fuel, Emma. Channel it. Use it. Let it make you sharper." The neural interface went live, and suddenly Emma was the ship. She felt the hull as her skin, the engines as her heartbeat, the weapons as extensions of her will. Information flooded her consciousness. Enemy positions, asteroid field composition, gravitational anomalies, munitions inventory. 18 enemy ships materialized at maximum engagement range. Exactly what the briefing had specified. No surprises, no cheating, just her against impossible odds. "Engage," Commandant X said. Emma punched the throttle and dove straight into hell. The enemy fleet opened fire immediately, plasma bolts creating a web of death across the operational space. Emma's ship, a light cruiser designated Defiant, twisted through the barrage with thrust patterns that would have liquefied a biological crew under the G-forces. "Suicidal approach vector," Kraith muttered to the observers. "Exactly what I expected." But Emma wasn't charging blindly. Her eyes tracked 16 different variables simultaneously, the neural interface letting her process information faster than any alien species except maybe the Taxians. She saw what others missed. The asteroid field wasn't just terrain, it was ammunition. Emma fired her forward thrusters at full burn, killing her forward momentum in a maneuver that would have ripped a real ship apart. The sudden deceleration meant the enemy's targeting solutions dissolved into garbage data. Plasma bolts meant for her bow streaked past into empty space. She rotated 90 degrees and activated her tractor beam. The simulation had given her one light cruiser against 18 heavy warships. Standard doctrine said run, hide, or die. But standard doctrine was written by species who saw asteroids as obstacles. Humans saw tools. Emma's tractor beam locked onto a tumbling chunk of nickel iron the size of a skyscraper. She fed power from her shields directly into the emitter, yanking the asteroid into a violent spin. The enemy fleet adjusted their formation, moving to flank her position. They didn't see it coming. Emma released the asteroid at precisely calculated velocity and sent it screaming toward the enemy formation at 300 meters per second. Then she fired her main railgun. The hypervelocity round hit the asteroid dead center. It exploded into 1,000 fragments, each one a kinetic kill vehicle traveling at lethal speed. The enemy point defense systems tried to engage but couldn't track that many targets simultaneously. 5 enemy ships vanished in overlapping clouds of shrapnel and atmospheric venting. "Impossible," someone whispered in the observation gallery. Kraith said nothing, his mandibles frozen half open. Emma didn't celebrate. 13 ships remained, and now they knew she was dangerous. They scattered into a wide formation, denying her another cluster shot. Their tactical AI was learning, adapting. Good. So was she. She dove deeper into the asteroid field, her piloting threading the needle between tumbling rocks with centimeters to spare. The enemy followed but had to slow down, their larger ships unable to match her maneuverability. Emma used the breathing room to check her munitions. 4 torpedoes. 60% railgun capacitor charge, no missiles. The simulation gave her minimal offensive capability by design. Standard loadout assumed you had a fleet, had support, had backup. Emma had something better. She had spite. She let the enemy cruisers think they were herding her toward a dead end, a section of the asteroid field where the rocks clustered so densely that navigation became impossible. They tightened their formation, preparing for the kill. Emma positioned herself exactly where she needed to be and fired all 4 torpedoes simultaneously, not at the enemy ships, at the asteroids surrounding them. The torpedoes detonated in a synchronized sequence, their shaped charges directing explosive force inward. Millions of tons of rock and ice accelerated toward the enemy formation from every direction at once. The enemy point defense lit up space with defensive fire, but you can't shoot down a mountain range. 3 more ships died, crushed between colliding asteroids, or torn apart by the debris field. The survivors scattered again, their formation discipline breaking. Emma smiled coldly and activated her communications jamming suite. In the observation gallery, Admiral Voss leaned forward. Beside him, a Karathi Jansu instructor muttered something about human creative violence that the translator didn't bother rendering. 10 enemy ships remained, but they'd lost cohesion. Emma had turned their numerical advantage into a liability. In open space, they could have overwhelmed her with coordinated fire, but she dragged them into an environment where their size and firepower meant nothing. She checked her chrono. 8 minutes elapsed. The scenario typically lasted 20 minutes before the defending force was overwhelmed, but Emma wasn't defending. She was hunting. The nearest enemy cruiser was trying to extract itself from the asteroid field, backing out slowly with shields forward. Emma came at it from above, using a large asteroid for cover until the last possible second. She dropped on the enemy ship like a hawk on a rabbit. Her railgun spoke once. The hypersonic round punched through the enemy's dorsal shield at point-blank range and cored out their reactor. The ship went dark and began tumbling. 9 left, Emma whispered. She pulled hard to starboard, rolling around another asteroid cluster as return fire lit up her previous position. The enemy was getting smarter, coordinating their shots to create inescapable kill zones. Emma's hands danced across the controls, her Neuralink translating thought into action faster than conventional piloting. She used every trick she'd learned racing atmosphere ships back home, every desperate maneuver her father had taught her, every physics principle she'd absorbed at the academy. The enemy had better ships, better weapons, better shields. But Emma had 3 years of accumulated rage. She led 2 enemy cruisers into a stern chase, letting them think they were gaining. Then she killed her engines completely and fired her ventral thrusters. The Defiant flipped end over end in a maneuver called a Crazy Ivan back on Earth. Suddenly, she was flying backward, nose to nose with her pursuers. Both ships fired everything they had. Emma's shields evaporated under the assault. Alarm screaming as her hull plating began to fail. She fired her last railgun shot. The round entered the lead cruiser's bridge and exited through their engine compartment. The ship tore itself apart from internal explosions. The debris cloud slammed into the second pursuer, shredding their forward shields. Emma's torpedo tubes were empty. Her railgun was depleted. Her shields were gone. She had 1 weapon left. Emma aimed her crippled ship directly at the damaged enemy cruiser and pushed her engines past redline. The Defiant's reactor temperature spiked into critical ranges. Warning klaxons filled the cockpit with ear-splitting noise. The enemy captain saw her coming and tried to evade, but their maneuvering thrusters had taken damage from the debris impact. They were too slow. Emma's ship hit them at full combat speed. The collision tore the Defiant's bow section completely off, but the enemy cruiser buckled amidships and broke in half. Both ships tumbled away in opposite directions, trailing atmosphere and fluid leaks. In the observation gallery, a Thaxian instructor's translator barked out something that roughly meant, by the void, she's insane. Emma's simulation pod shook from the impact. Her display showed catastrophic damage across every system. Life support was failing. Main power was offline. She was venting atmosphere from 17 hull breaches. 7 enemy ships remained, and they were converging on her position. She had no weapons, no shields, no engines. Her ship was a dying wreck spinning through an asteroid field. Emma's fingers flew across the emergency systems panel. The Defiant still had maneuvering thrusters, barely, still had her reactor, even if it was melting down, still had her gravitational compensators, though they were operating at 12% capacity. Most importantly, she still had her tractor beam. The enemy fleet approached cautiously now. Having learned to fear her, they formed a defensive sphere, overlapping their firing solutions to eliminate any possible escape vector. Emma waited until they were exactly where she needed them. Then she fired her tractor beam at the largest asteroid in range, a planetoid-sized chunk of rock 3 kilometers across. She poured every erg of remaining power into the emitter, even bleeding energy from her failing life support. The asteroid began to move. "What is she doing?" Kraith demanded, stepping closer to the projection. His earlier confidence had evaporated. "That's impossible. A light cruiser can't generate enough force to—" The asteroid accelerated, pulled by Emma's tractor beam, but also pushed by its own collision with smaller rocks that Emma had carefully positioned during her earlier maneuvers. She'd been planning this from the moment she entered the field. 3 years of being called primitive. 3 years of watching qualified human officers get assigned to garbage details while incompetent aliens got command positions. 3 years of rigged simulations and stacked odds. Emma had learned to think 12 moves ahead. The massive asteroid plowed into the enemy formation like the fist of an angry god. 2 ships tried to dodge and collided with each other. 3 more were simply crushed against the rock face, their shields collapsing under the impossible mass. The remaining 2 scattered in panic. Emma's ship was still dying, but she wasn't done. She used her last functioning maneuvering thruster to spin the Defiant until her reactor faced the nearest surviving enemy ship. Then she initiated a manual core overload, something that should have been impossible with the simulation safety protocols. But Emma had found a loophole in the emergency systems during her 2nd year, a back door that let her bypass the automatic shutdown if she input the override code fast enough. Her fingers were very fast. "Cadet Price, cease immediately!" Commandant Thex's voice cut through the chaos. "You are violating safety. The scenario ends when all threats are eliminated," Emma said calmly, watching her reactor temperature climb past every single safety threshold. "Or when my ship is destroyed." "Sir." Kraith lunged toward the simulation controls, but Admiral Voss stepped in front of him. The Terran commander's face was carved from stone. "Let it play out." Emma's reactor hit critical mass. She had exactly 4 seconds before detonation. The 2 remaining enemy ships were accelerating away, trying to get clear of the blast radius. They wouldn't make it. Emma closed her eyes and thought about every human cadet who'd been told they weren't good enough, every promising officer who'd been washed out by impossible standards, every Earth ship assigned to patrol routes that meant nothing while alien crews got the glory postings. "This is for all of us," she whispered. The Defiant's reactor exploded with the force of a small star-going supernova. The blast wave expanded at relativistic speeds, consuming everything within 1,000 kilometers. Both remaining enemy ships vanished in the expanding sphere of annihilation. When the simulation cleared, space was empty except for cooling debris. The classroom sat in absolute silence. Emma's pod hissed open. She climbed out on shaking legs, her flight suit soaked with sweat. Her hands trembled from adrenaline crash, but she forced them steady as she came to attention before the instructor's podium. "Scenario complete," she said, her voice level. "All enemy vessels destroyed. Kessler defense successfully maintained." Commandant Thex's crystalline form pulsed with colors Emma had never seen before. "Cadet Price, that was the most reckless, dangerous, tactically unsound, brilliant," Admiral Voss interrupted. The observation gallery shimmered as he stepped through the holographic barrier into the physical classroom. "That was absolutely brilliant." He walked directly to Emma and extended his hand. 14 minutes, 42 seconds. "That's the fastest completion time in the scenario's history. And you did it alone, with minimal munitions, Against regulation parameters, Emma shook his hand, trying to process what was happening. Around the classroom, alien cadets were checking their own displays, confirming the results. Several were staring at her with expressions that ranged from shock to something that might have been respect. Kraith stood at his podium, his exoskeleton plates locked rigid, his 4 eyes fixed on Emma with undisguised hatred. "Tribunal review, as agreed," Emma said, turning to face Kraith directly. "Every simulation parameter from the past 3 cycles, every human cadet evaluation, everything." Kraith's mandibles snapped shut with a sound like breaking bones. "This proves nothing. One lucky run does not..." "Lucky?" Admiral Voss turned slowly, and the temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. "Commandant Thex, please display the parameter comparison." The crystalline being gestured, and 2 holographic datasets materialized in the center of the classroom. Side by side, they showed the Kessler scenario specifications. The left display showed regulation parameters. The right showed what Kraith had actually used. The differences were staggering. 18 enemy ships versus 32. Thex said, her chime-like voice unusually cold. Standard weapon yields versus enhanced. 40%. Regulation shield strength versus reinforced double capacity. Response time reduced by half. Tactical AI increased from level 4 to level 7. She rotated toward Kraith, and her crystalline structure reflected the damning data in 1,000 facets. Instructor Kraith, these modifications were never authorized. They were implemented using your personal access codes across 73 separate training exercises over the past 3 cycles. The classroom erupted. Alien cadets shouted in a dozen languages. A Karathi stood up so fast their chair toppled backward. Emma saw several cadets frantically pulling up records of their own simulation failures, their faces transforming as they realized they'd been sabotaged. Furthermore, Thex continued, overriding the noise, cross-referencing with Academy records shows a distinct pattern. Human cadets were subjected to modified scenarios at triple the rate of any other species. Pass rates for Terran students in Lieutenant Kraith's courses are 18%. The Academy average is 74%. Kraith's claws gouged marks in the podium. Humans are weaker. They require more stringent. Cadet Price just completed an impossible scenario. Admiral Voss snapped. Alone, under regulation parameters, that your own species fails 60% of the time, even with full crew support. He pulled up another display, this one showing decades of Academy statistics. Want to know something interesting, Kraith? Before you started teaching here 4 years ago, human pass rates were exactly average, 72%. Then you arrived, and suddenly Earth's brightest tactical minds started washing out. Emma felt her stomach twist. 4 years. How many careers had Kraith destroyed? How many talented officers had Earth lost because one bigoted instructor couldn't stand the idea of human competence? Where did they go? She asked quietly. Voss looked at her with something like sorrow. Most left military service entirely. Some took civilian positions. A few requested transfer to other coalition academies, but by then their record showed failure. They were rejected. He turned back to Kraith. 47 human cadets washed out under your instruction. 47 officers Earth desperately needed. Officers who might have saved lives during the Helix border conflicts. Officers who earned their place here and had it stolen by your prejudice. Kraith's exoskeleton was changing color, darkening to deep purple, a Velxian sign of extreme stress. They were inferior. All the data was manufactured by you, Thex interrupted. She projected another dataset. This one showing simulation logs with timestamps. You altered parameters in real time during examinations, adjusted difficulty on the fly, created impossible conditions specifically when human cadets approached success thresholds. Emma watched Crate's 4 eyes dart between the exits. He was calculating escape routes, measuring distances. His military career was over, possibly his freedom as well. The Galactic Defense Coalition took training integrity seriously. Sabotaging officer candidates during wartime could carry charges of treason. I demand tribunal review of these accusations, Crate said, but his voice had lost its earlier venom. Now he just sounded desperate. Coalition law requires. Tribunal review has already been convened. A new voice announced. The classroom walls shimmered again as 3 more holographic observers materialized. Emma recognized one Fleet Admiral Korath, Supreme Commander of Coalition forces. His crystalline species gave nothing away through body language, but his presence alone spoke volumes. We have been monitoring this situation for 6 weeks, Korath said. Anonymous reports reached my office regarding statistical anomalies in human officer production. When I investigated, the patterns became clear. He gestured, and the air filled with cascading data. 73 modified scenarios, 112 unauthorized parameter changes, 47 destroyed careers. Lieutenant Craith, you are hereby relieved of all teaching duties pending formal tribunal proceedings. 2 security officers materialized in the doorway. Actual physical presence, not holograms. They wore the black armor of Coalition military police. Craith looked at them, looked at the damning evidence floating in the air around him, and his exoskeleton seemed to deflate. They are weak, he said quietly. One last gasp of defiance. Humanity does not belong among the stars. You will all see. You will, Instructor Craith, Emma said, stepping forward. Her voice cut through his rant like a knife. I have a question. The classroom went silent. Craith's eyes focused on her with pure hatred. How many simulations have I run in your class? Emma asked. Irrelevant, Craith hissed. 42, Emma answered her own question. 42 scenarios over 2 years. I failed 38 of them. Do you know why I kept coming back? She walked closer, and Craith actually flinched. This human cadet who'd just gone through hell and come out the other side now radiated something that made a predator species instinctively retreat. Because every time you rigged a scenario, I learned something, Emma continued. I studied your patterns, analyzed your modifications, figured out how you thought, and I realized something important. She stopped directly in front of him, close enough that he had to look down to meet her eyes. You weren't making us weaker, Emma said softly. You were making us sharper. Every impossible scenario taught us to think differently, to see solutions where you saw dead ends, to win when winning should have been impossible. She smiled, and it was absolutely merciless. So thank you, Instructor. You tried to break humanity, and instead you forged something that terrifies you. The military police led Craith away in restraints. He didn't fight, didn't protest. His exoskeleton had faded to pale gray, the Velxian color of defeat. Emma watched him go and felt nothing. No satisfaction, no vindication, just exhaustion. Cadet Price, Fleet Admiral Korath said, his crystalline voice drawing her attention. A word. Emma snapped to attention as the other cadets filed out of the classroom. She caught glimpses of their faces, shock, respect, fear. A Dravixian cadet named Chen nodded to her as he passed. 3 months ago, he'd refused to acknowledge her existence. When the room cleared, only Korath, Admiral Voss, and Commandant Tex remained. You took an enormous risk, Korath said, challenging an instructor publicly. demanding tribunal review, staking your entire career on one simulation run. Yes, sir, Emma replied. Why? Thex asked. You could have reported through proper channels now. Let the investigation proceed quietly. Emma met their gazes steadily. Because 47 humans already tried proper channels. They filed complaints, requested reviews, followed protocol. And nothing changed. She gestured toward the empty classroom. Every species in the coalition saw humans fail and accepted it as proof we were inferior. If I'd gone quiet, the narrative would have stayed the same. But now? Admiral Voss smiled grimly. Now every cadet in this academy just watched a human do the impossible. They saw the evidence, saw the corruption. That story spreads.
Exactly, Emma said.
Humanity doesn't need quiet vindication. We need loud proof that we belong here. Korath's crystalline structure pulsed with light. Your tactical performance was exceptional, unconventional, reckless, and completely effective. Those are not common combinations. Human specialty, Sir, Emma said. Indeed. Korath pulled up a holographic document. The 47 cadets Kraith sabotaged are being offered immediate reinstatement with full rank restoration. Those who left military service will receive personal apologies from my office and priority consideration for officer positions. Emma felt something tight in her chest finally release. Thank you, sir. Don't thank me yet, Korath continued. The tribunal will take months. During that time, Kraith's cases will be reviewed publicly. Earth's reputation in the coalition will be under intense scrutiny. Your performance today helped, but there will be backlash. Some species will claim human favoritism. Others will resent the implication that their own cadets succeeded through easier standards. Let them complain, Emma said flatly. The data doesn't lie. Voss laughed, the sound harsh but genuine. Price, how would you like a new assignment? Emma blinked. Sir, the coalition is forming a new tactical development unit, Voss explained. Small team. Mixed species. Their job is to analyze unconventional warfare scenarios and develop new combat doctrines. They need someone who thinks like you do. Like I do, sir? Crazy, Thex said, and there might have been amusement in her chiming voice. They need someone who sees asteroids as ammunition and suicide runs as viable tactics. Someone who wins by rewriting the rules. Emma's pulse quickened. When do I start? 6 months, Korath said, after you graduate. Top of your class, if today is any indication. The assignment comes with immediate promotion to full lieutenant and command track placement. Everything she'd wanted, everything she'd fought for, handed to her because she'd refused to accept failure as inevitable. I accept, Emma said. On one condition? Boss raised an eyebrow. You're in no position to negotiate, Cadet. I want the other humans from my class on the team, Emma said. The ones who survived Kraith's scenarios. They're just as good as me. They just needed someone to prove it was possible. The 3 senior officers exchanged glances. Finally, Korath nodded. Approve. Assemble your team. Show the coalition what humanity can do when given a fair chance. Emma saluted. Yes, sir, we will. As she left the classroom, Emma pulled out her personal communicator. 42 messages waited, mostly from human cadets across the academy. She scrolled through them. Congratulations, shock, questions about what happened. One message stood out. From her father back on Earth. Saw the academy feed? The whole planet is watching. You made us proud, Emma. Your mom would have loved this. Emma smiled, genuinely this time, and typed a quick reply. Then she headed toward the cadet barracks where she knew the other humans would be waiting. They had work to do, a reputation to rebuild, a place to earn. Among the stars. The Galactic Defense Coalition had spent years underestimating humanity, treating Earth's warriors as inferior, stacking the odds and expecting them to fail. They'd just learned a critical lesson. Humans didn't need fair fights to win, but give them one anyway, and they'd show the galaxy what 3 billion years of evolution on a death world actually meant. Emma Price walked into the afternoon sunlight streaming through the Academy's crystalline corridors, and for the first time in 3 years, she felt like she belonged. Behind her, the simulation deck powered down. The Kessler scenario reset to default parameters. 18 enemy ships, standard difficulty, regulation conditions. Humanity would never face rigged odds in that classroom again. The galaxy was about to learn what humans had always known. When you push them down, they don't stay down. They come back harder,